I found the photograph at an estate sale in the English countryside, in the village of Ashford-on-Thames. It was a Saturday in May, one of those perfect spring days when the hedgerows are thick with blossoms and the air smells of fresh-cut grass and possibility. The sale was being held at what remained of Thornwood Manor, a once grand estate that had fallen into disrepair and was being sold off piece by piece. Among the items was a photograph, perhaps 10 by 12 inches, showing 5 people posed formally in front of a large doorway, with ivy growing along the building. 3 women, dressed as maids in long white aprons and dark underdresses, stood on either side of 2 men, one in a dark suit and tie, the other in a buttoned uniform resembling a butler's attire. In the center, an older woman sat in a chair wearing a dark dress, her expression calm but stern. The setting appeared to be from the early 1900s, with a faintly somber, formal tone, typical of servant portraits from that period. But there was something unsettling about the photograph. The seated woman's expression held more than just Victorian sternness. There was something calculating in her eyes, something that suggested she was planning rather than simply posing. The estate sale manager noticed my interest. "That's the Thornwood Manor staff from 1912, she said quietly. "One of the most shocking cases in English criminal history. Those maids, led by the older woman, Mrs. Hartley, systematically poisoned the entire Thornwood family over a period of months. They wanted to take the family's place, inherit the manor. Nearly succeeded too, before they were caught." On the back of the photograph, in faded ink, was written, "Thornwood Manor Staff, Ashford-on-Thames, England, June 1912. And below that, in different, more recent handwriting, Mrs. Agnes Hartley, seated, the mastermind, the poisoning plot of 1912. 5 family members dead before the truth emerged. Envy, ambition, and murder. I bought the photograph along with a box of related materials, newspaper clippings, court transcripts, and letters, for £600, knowing immediately I'd discovered something extraordinary. That evening in my hotel room, I spread everything out. What I pieced together was a story of servants who had come to believe they deserved the lives of their employers, and who had decided to take those lives, literally, through systematic poisoning. The newspaper clippings began with what seemed like natural deaths. From the Times, September 15th, 1912. Lord Edmund Thornwood dies at age 52. Lord Edmund Thornwood, owner of Thornwood Manor and respected member of the county gentry, died yesterday after a brief illness. He was 52 years old. Lord Thornwood had been in declining health for several months, suffering from what physicians described as a wasting illness. Despite the best medical attention, his condition deteriorated until his death on September 14th. He is survived by his wife, Lady Margaret Thornwood, and 3 adult children, Charles, 28, Victoria, 26, and William, 24. Funeral services will be held at St. Mary's Church on September 20th. From the Times, October 22nd, 1912. Lady Margaret Thornwood dies following brief illness. Lady Margaret Thornwood, widow of the late Lord Edmund Thornwood, died yesterday at Thornwood Manor. She was 49 years old. Lady Thornwood had been ill for several weeks with symptoms similar to those that claimed her husband just 5 weeks ago. Despite treatment by the family physician, Dr. James Morrison, her condition steadily worsened until her death. The Thornwood family has now suffered 2 tragic losses in as many months. The deceased is survived by her 3 children, Charles, Victoria, and William Thornwood. From the Times, November 18th, 1912. Third Thornwood family. Member dies questions raised about series of deaths. Mr. Charles Thornwood, eldest son of the late Lord Edmund and Lady Margaret Thornwood, died yesterday at age 28, marking the third death in the family in just over 2 months. Mr. Thornwood had been suffering from the same mysterious wasting illness that claimed his parents. His death has prompted Dr. Morrison to call for a formal investigation into the series of deaths at Thornwood Manor. 3 members of the same family dying within 2 months from similar symptoms is highly unusual, Dr. Morrison stated. I am concerned that some environmental factor at the manor may be responsible, or that the deaths may not be natural. The remaining Thornwood children, Miss Victoria and Mr. William, are both reportedly showing early symptoms of illness, but it was the next article that revealed the truth. From the Times, November 25, 1912. Shocking discovery at Thornwood Manor. Servants arrested for poisoning, family systematic murder, plot uncovered in a stunning development. 5 servants at Thornwood Manor have been arrested on suspicion of murdering Lord Edmund Thornwood, Lady Margaret Thornwood, and Mr. Charles Thornwood through systematic poisoning. The arrest came after Dr. Morrison, suspicious of the pattern of deaths, ordered toxicology examinations of the deceased family members. The examinations revealed the presence of arsenic in all 3 bodies. Further investigation uncovered that the manor's staff, led by housekeeper Mrs. Agnes Hartley, had been systematically poisoning the Thornwood family over a period of months with the apparent goal of eliminating the entire family and somehow taking possession of the manor. Those arrested are Mrs. Agnes Hartley, 56, head housekeeper Miss Sarah Bennett, 32, housemaid Miss Emily Wilson, 28, housemaid Mr. Thomas Fletcher, 45, butler Mr. James Dawson, 38, estate manager. The remaining Thornwood children, Miss Victoria, 26, and Mr. William, 24, are receiving medical treatment for arsenic poisoning and are expected to survive. Police have seized extensive evidence from the manor, including arsenic-laced food and drink, as well as documents suggesting the servants had been planning to claim the estate for themselves. The investigation continues. I found the detailed police investigation report, which revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. From the police investigation report, November 1912. Investigation into the poisoning deaths at Thornwood Manor. Beginning in June 1912, 5 servants at Thornwood Manor engaged in a conspiracy to murder the entire Thornwood family through systematic arsenic poisoning. The conspiracy was led by Mrs. Agnes Hartley, who had served as head housekeeper at the manor for 23 years. The conspiracy. Mrs. Hartley conceived the plan in early 1912. She had spent over 2 decades serving the Thornwood family and had come to resent her position as a servant. She believed that she, who managed the day-to-day operations of the manor, deserved to own it rather than serve in it. She recruited 4 other servants to her cause. Thomas Fletcher, the butler, who shared her resentment of servitude. James Dawson, the estate manager, who had financial expertise. Sarah Bennett and Emily Wilson, housemaids who were devoted to Mrs. Hartley. Mrs. Hartley's plan was to gradually poison all 5 members of the Thornwood family in a way that would appear to be natural deaths from illness. Once the family was dead, and the servants had positioned themselves as the closest thing to family the Thornwoods had, they planned to forge documents suggesting the family had left the estate to them or to claim abandonment of the property. The plan was audacious and showed considerable calculation. Mrs. Hartley understood that 5 sudden deaths would trigger investigation, but a series of deaths from apparent illness stretched over several months, might be accepted as unfortunate, but natural. The method. Mrs. Hartley obtained arsenic, a common rat poison available at any chemist, in small quantities over several months to avoid suspicion. She stored it in a locked cabinet in her quarters. Beginning in June 1912, the servants began adding small amounts of arsenic to the family's food and drink. The amounts were carefully calibrated to cause chronic poisoning, gradual deterioration, rather than acute symptoms that would immediately suggest poison. Different family members were targeted at different times to avoid the appearance of a household-wide illness. Lord Edmund was poisoned first, beginning in June. His meals were prepared with arsenic-laced ingredients by Mrs. Hartley herself, who had access to the kitchen. By September, after 3 months of chronic poisoning, he died. Lady Margaret was poisoned next, beginning in August. She died in October, after 2 months of poisoning. Charles Thornwood was poisoned beginning in September. He died in November. Victoria and William Thornwood were poisoned beginning in October, but the conspiracy was discovered before the arsenic could prove fatal. Both are recovering. The servants were careful to vary who administered the poison to avoid patterns. Sometimes, Mrs. Hartley would prepare food. Sometimes the housemaids would serve poisoned tea or wine. The butler would ensure poisoned dishes reached the correct family members. The motive. Documents found in Mrs. Hartley's quarters reveal her twisted reasoning and the depth of her obsession with possessing the manor. From Mrs. Hartley's private journal, discovered by police. March 1912. I have served the Thornwood family for 23 years. I have managed this manor, organized every aspect of their lives, ensured everything runs smoothly. I know this house better than they do. I have given the best years of my life to this place. And what do I have to show for it? Servants' quarters, a modest salary, the constant obligation to serve people who were born to wealth I will never possess. The Thornwoods did nothing to deserve this manor. They inherited it. They contribute nothing to its management. I do everything. Yet they own it, and I merely serve. This is unjust. I deserve this manor. I have earned it through decades of service. The Thornwoods are merely obstacles to what should rightfully be mine. April 1912. I have formed a plan. It is audacious, but I believe it can work. If the Thornwood family were to die, all of them, there would be no direct heirs. The estate would be subject to various claims. With the right documentation, with the right positioning of ourselves as the closest thing to family, we servants could potentially claim the manor. Or, failing that, we could forge documents suggesting the family intended to leave the estate to those who had served them faithfully for so many years. It will require careful planning. It will require others to help. But I believe it is possible. May 1912. I have spoken with Thomas Fletcher. He shares my resentment of our positions. He believes, as I do, that we have earned the right to more than servitude. He is willing to help. James Dawson, the estate manager, has also agreed. His financial knowledge will be crucial for establishing our claim to the manor once the family is gone. Sarah Bennett and Emily Wilson are devoted to me. They will do as I ask without question. We are 5. The family is 5. If we work together, we can eliminate them and take their place. June 1912. The plan begins today. I have acquired arsenic. I will begin poisoning Lord Edmund. The others will help when needed. We will proceed slowly, carefully. It must appear natural. If we are patient by this time next year. We will be the masters of Thornwood Manor rather than its servants. The photograph taken in June 1912, just as the poisoning began, shows all 5 of us. We look like ordinary servants posing for a staff portrait. No one looking at that photograph would suspect we are conspirators planning murder. We appear respectable, dedicated, trustworthy. That is precisely as it should be. The best servants are invisible. The best murderers are unsuspected. I found testimony from Dr. Morrison, whose suspicions had ultimately exposed the conspiracy. From the testimony of Dr. James Morrison, December 1912. I had been the Thornwood family physician for 15 years. I knew all of them well. When Lord Edmund began showing symptoms of illness in July 1912, I treated him for what I believed to be a gastrointestinal disorder. His symptoms included nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, and general weakness. These worsened over time despite treatment. By September, he was severely weakened and suffering from organ failure. He died on September 14th. When Lady Margaret developed similar symptoms in September, I was concerned but initially attributed it to grief over her husband's death affecting her health. Her symptoms progressed similarly to Lord Edmund's. She died on October 21st. When Charles developed the same symptoms in October, I became deeply suspicious. 3 family members developing identical mysterious illnesses was beyond coincidence. I ordered toxicology examinations of the deceased and discovered arsenic poisoning. I immediately alerted police and had Victoria and William examined. Both showed early signs of chronic arsenic poisoning and were immediately treated. Had I not grown suspicious and ordered those examinations, Victoria and William would likely have died within weeks, and the entire Thornwood family would have been eliminated. Looking back, I should have suspected poisoning sooner. The symptoms were consistent with chronic arsenic exposure. But one does not immediately suspect that servants, people who have served a family faithfully for years, would systematically murder those they serve. I found testimony from Victoria and William Thornwood, the surviving family members. From the testimony of Victoria Thornwood, January 1913, I cannot adequately express the horror of learning that people we trusted, people who had served our family for years, had been systematically murdering us. Mrs. Hartley had been our housekeeper for over 20 years. She had been part of our household since I was a small child. I trusted her completely. She managed everything in our home. She was the person we relied on. And she was poisoning us. She was putting arsenic in our food and drink, watching us slowly die, all so she could take our home. My father died first. We were devastated by his death but had no reason to suspect it was anything but natural. Mrs. Hartley was so solicitous during his illness, so attentive. She prepared special meals for him, made sure he had his favorite tea. We thought she was caring for him. She was killing him. Then my mother fell ill. Again, Mrs. Hartley and the other servants seemed so caring, so concerned. They were helpful during her illness, preparing meals, bringing medicine. We trusted them completely. They were murdering her. When my brother Charles died, Dr. Morrison finally became suspicious. The toxicology examination revealed the truth. Arsenic poisoning. William and I were also being poisoned. We had both been feeling unwell for weeks, and we would have died too if Dr. Morrison had not discovered the truth. The betrayal is almost worse than the physical harm. These were people we trusted, people we considered part of our household, and they saw us not as people, but as obstacles to be eliminated. Mrs. Hartley kept a journal. In it, she wrote that she deserved our manor because she had served us for so long. She thought decades of service entitled her to our home, so she decided to murder us all and take it. I hope she hangs. I hope they all hang. The trial began in March 1913. The evidence was overwhelming. From the Times, April 15th, 1913. Thornwood poisoning trial. Reveals shocking conspiracy. The trial of 5 servants accused of murdering 3 members of the Thornwood family through systematic arsenic poisoning has shocked the nation, as testimony reveals the depth and calculation of the conspiracy. Mrs. Agnes Hartley, the alleged mastermind, is portrayed by prosecutors as a woman consumed by envy and resentment who came to believe she deserved to own the manor where she had served for over 2 decades. Evidence presented includes Mrs. Hartley's journal documenting the conspiracy from conception to execution, toxicology reports confirming arsenic poisoning in all 3 deceased, arsenic-laced food items recovered from the manor, testimony from Victoria and William Thornwood, who survived because the plot was discovered, testimony from Dr. Shan Morrison about the suspicious pattern of deaths. The prosecution has argued that all 5 defendants were active participants in a murder conspiracy, each playing a specific role in administering poison and concealing evidence. The defense has attempted to argue that only Mrs. Hartley was responsible and that the others were coerced or manipulated into participation. However, evidence suggests all 5 were willing participants who shared the goal of eliminating the Thornwood family and taking possession of the manor. From the trial transcript, Mrs. Hartley's testimony. Prosecutor: Mrs. Hartley, did you poison Lord Edmund Thornwood? Mrs. Hartley: I gave him what he deserved. Prosecutor: Did you poison Lady Margaret Thornwood and Charles Thornwood? Mrs. Hartley: They were obstacles. I removed them. Prosecutor: And you intended to poison Victoria and William Thornwood as well? Mrs. Hartley: All of them needed to go. The manor should be mine. I earned it. They inherited it through accident of birth. I managed it for 23 years. It should have been mine. Prosecutor: So you murdered 3 people and attempted to murder 2 more because you felt entitled to their property? Mrs. Hartley: I didn't feel entitled. I was entitled. 23 years of service. 23 years of managing every detail of their lives while they did nothing but enjoy the wealth they were born into. Yes, I deserved the manor, and I took steps to claim what was mine. Prosecutor: You feel no remorse for murdering a family you served? Mrs. Hartley: I regret being caught. I regret that Victoria and William survived. If we had succeeded, we would now be living in that manor as its rightful owners. We would have everything we earned. The verdicts came in May 1913. From the Times, May 20th, 1913. All 5 defendants found guilty of murder, sentenced to death by hanging. Mrs. Agnes Hartley and 4 other servants from Thornwood Manor have been found guilty of murder and conspiracy to commit murder and have been sentenced to death by hanging. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts for all 5 defendants. In announcing the sentences, Judge William Harrison stated, You 5 individuals betrayed the trust placed in you by your employers. You were given positions of responsibility in the Thornwood household, and you used those positions to systematically murder the family you served. You killed 3 people and attempted to kill 2 more out of envy and greed. You deserve no mercy." Mrs. Hartley showed no emotion as the sentence was announced. She stated, "The only crime here is that servants are expected to remain servants forever, while the wealthy enjoy privileges they did nothing to earn. We tried to correct that injustice." The other 4 defendants appeared shaken, and several broke down in tears. All 5 will be executed at separate prisons over the coming months. The executions took place between July and October 1913, with Mrs. Hartley being hanged last. From the Times, October 15th, 1913. Mrs. Agnes Hartley, hanged for Thornwood murders. Mrs. Agnes Hartley, mastermind of the Thornwood Manor poisoning conspiracy, was executed by hanging this morning at Holloway Prison. She was 57 years old. Hartley maintained her composure to the end. Her final words were, "I deserved that manner. History will understand that I was attempting to correct an injustice." With Hartley's execution, the Thornwood poisoning case comes to a close. All 5 conspirators have now been executed for their roles in murdering Lord Edmund Thornwood, Lady Margaret Thornwood, and Charles Thornwood, and for attempting to murder Victoria and William Thornwood. Victoria and William Thornwood have sold Thornwood Manor and relocated to London. Neither wished to return to the home where their family was systematically murdered by those they trusted. I found one more document, a letter written in 1950 by Victoria Thornwood, reflecting on the tragedy nearly 40 years later. From a letter by Victoria Thornwood, now Victoria Thornwood Wells. Dated 1950. "I am 64 years old now. The Thornwood poisoning happened 38 years ago, when I was 26. My father, mother, and eldest brother were murdered by our servants. My younger brother William and I survived only because Dr. Morrison became suspicious and ordered toxicology examinations. I have spent nearly 4 decades trying to understand what happened, how people we trusted could systematically murder us, how envy and resentment could transform seemingly respectable servants into calculating killers. Mrs. Hartley had served our family for 23 years. I grew up with her as our housekeeper. She seemed devoted, trustworthy, competent. I never imagined she harbored such resentment, such murderous envy. But her journal, revealed during the trial, showed her true feelings. She resented her position. She believed she deserved to own our manor because she had managed it for so long. She convinced 4 other servants to help her eliminate our entire family so they could take our place. The photograph taken in June 1912, just as the poisoning began. I have seen it. It shows Mrs. Hartley seated in the center with the other 4 conspirators around her. They look like ordinary servants posing for a staff portrait. Mrs. Hartley looks stern but respectable, the image of a competent head housekeeper. Nothing in that photograph suggests these 5 people are conspirators who have just begun systematically poisoning the family they serve. They look trustworthy, dedicated. That was precisely the disguise that allowed them to commit their crimes. Mrs. Hartley was brilliant in a terrible way. She understood that slow poisoning with symptoms resembling natural illness would be less likely to trigger suspicion than sudden deaths. She calculated exactly how much arsenic to use, how to vary who administered it, how to appear solicitous and caring while murdering us. If Dr. Morrison had not grown suspicious after 3 family members died with similar symptoms, William and I would have died too. The entire Thornwood family would have been eliminated. Whether the servants could have successfully claimed the manor is uncertain, but Mrs. Hartley clearly believed they could, and that belief motivated her to murder. I never returned to Thornwood Manor after the trial. William and I sold it immediately. We could not bear to live in the home where our family was murdered, where every meal and every cup of tea had potentially contained poison, where people we trusted had been systematically killing us. The manor has since been torn down. I am glad. It should not stand as a monument to what happened there. I write this to honor my father, mother, and brother, who were murdered by people they trusted, and to warn others that envy and resentment can fester hidden for years before exploding into violence. The servants who killed my family appeared respectable and dedicated for decades before revealing themselves as murderers. Trust carefully. Not everyone who serves you wishes you well. Victoria Thornwood Wells, 1050. I spent months researching the case further, examining records of other servant poisoning cases in England, studying the psychology of conspirators like Mrs. Hartley, and documenting the long-term impact on the surviving Thornwood family. What emerged was a clear picture of how envy and resentment could transform seemingly respectable people into systematic murderers, how a charismatic leader like Mrs. Hartley could recruit others into conspiracy, and how trust could be exploited by those determined to harm. I wrote a comprehensive account of the case, examining not just what happened, but what it revealed about class resentment, conspiracy psychology, and the dangers of giving those consumed by envy access to those they envy. The book was titled Poison at Thornwood: The Servants' Plot to Murder and Replace the Family They Served. The photograph from June 1912 appeared on the cover. Looking at it now, knowing the full story, it became a deeply disturbing image. 5 servants posed formally in front of Thornwood Manor's grand doorway. 3 maids in their white aprons and dark dresses, a butler in formal attire, an estate manager in a dark suit. And in the center, seated, Mrs. Agnes Hartley, the head housekeeper with her stern, calculating expression. They looked like any manor staff of the period, respectable, dedicated, trustworthy. A typical servant's portrait from 1912. But this photograph was taken in June 1912, just as the conspiracy began. Mrs. Hartley had already obtained the arsenic. The plan to murder the entire Thornwood family was already in motion. Lord Edmund had already received his first doses of poison. These 5 people standing in this photograph were conspirators, bound together by envy and ambition, who had decided to systematically murder the family they served in order to take that family's place. Over the next 5 months, they would murder Lord Edmund, Lady Margaret, and Charles Thornwood. They would have murdered Victoria and William too if they hadn't been caught. I received many letters in response to the book, some from historians of crime, others from psychologists studying conspiracy and group violence. But one letter moved me most deeply. It was from the great-great-grandson of William Thornwood. Dear Dr. Morrison, thank you for researching and telling my family's tragic story with such care. William Thornwood was my great-great-grandfather. He was 24 years old when he survived being poisoned by the servants who were supposed to protect and serve his family. The photograph you feature in your book, showing the 5 servants in June 1912, is particularly chilling. My family has preserved a copy of this photograph as a reminder of what happened. Looking at it now, knowing what those 5 people were planning, it becomes unbearable. Mrs. Hartley sits there looking stern and competent, the image of a respectable head housekeeper. but she had already decided to murder the entire family. The arsenic was already hidden in her quarters. The conspiracy was already underway. The other 4 stand around her, looking like ordinary servants, but they were all conspirators who had agreed to help eliminate my family so they could take our place. Thank you for ensuring that the Thornwood poisoning is remembered and that Lord Edmund, Lady Margaret, and Charles Thornwood are honoured as victims of a terrible betrayal. Sincerely, Christopher Thornwood. The photograph now hangs in my study, a powerful reminder of how envy can corrupt, how trust can be exploited, and how evil can hide behind the most respectable appearances. I look at that photograph often. 5 servants at Thornwood Manor in 1912, posed formally in front of the grand doorway. They look competent, trustworthy, dedicated, everything good servants should be. But they were murderers who had come to believe they deserved to own the manor where they served, and who had decided to eliminate the family that stood in their way. The photograph was taken in June 1912. Over the next 5 months, led by Mrs. Hartley, these 5 servants would systematically poison 3 members of the Thornwood family and attempt to poison 2 more, before being caught and executed for their crimes. May Lord Edmund Thornwood, Lady Margaret Thornwood, and Charles Thornwood rest in peace. May they be remembered as victims of a terrible betrayal by those they trusted. And may Mrs. Agnes Hartley and her co-conspirators be remembered by history as examples of how envy and resentment can transform servants into murderers and respectable appearances into deadly disguises. The photograph looked ordinary. Until it was revealed, the maids had been slowly poisoning the family they served, led by the stern-faced head housekeeper who believed she deserved to own the manor rather than serve in it. A servant's portrait, taken just as a conspiracy to murder an entire family was beginning. That's the terrible truth preserved in this photograph from June 1912. The photograph looked ordinary. Until it was revealed the maids had been slowly poisoning the family they served,